Welcome, everyone, to a breaking news morning here at On the Pen. I am your host, Dave Knapp, man on the Manjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Manjaro, Zepbound, Compound, that pen. And it is a wild, wild morning in the world of GLP-1 news. An absolutely wild morning. So let's talk a little bit about the breaking news this morning. TikTok ban has been upheld by the Supreme Court. This is just coming across the wire in the last few minutes. The TikTok ban has given the green light to the law that was passed by Congress back about around 8 months ago. And even though TikTok mounted a free speech challenge to the bipartisan law that sought to ban the app, in the sense that it was requiring ByteDance, to the parent company of TikTok, to divest in TikTok, the Supreme Court on Friday this morning delivered a blow to TikTok by upholding that law, which could potentially lead to the video sharing social media platform being banned in the United States. Now, the way that this is going to be enforced is essentially by requiring the marketplaces, TikTok's marketplaces, like we're talking the Apple marketplace, the Android, Google Play Store, to basically face fines if they do not remove TikTok from their platform. So that is breaking news just this past in this past few minutes here. This is not unexpected. This was largely expected that the Supreme Court would uphold this decision. This was a law passed by both houses of Congress, signed by the president, Joe Biden, and now it has been upheld by the Supreme Court. We had a wonderful TikTok refugees live on YouTube last night. If you missed that, go over and check it out. But basically, a bunch of GLP-1 creators that you've come to know and love from TikTok are now moving to the platform of YouTube, and we introduced you to about 10 or 12 of them last night on the Pen Live, which happens every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Central. So if you missed that, the great thing about YouTube is you can go back and you can check it out, watch it in on demand. So we're going to get into some of the other news. This was a largely expected move. Now it'll be interesting to see how the Biden administration goes about enforcing this law now that it has been upheld. The deadline for the divestment was the 19th of this month. And so obviously we're right on the cusp of a new administration. The new administration and the current administration both sort of backtracking on their previous stances about TikTok, which has been wildly interesting to watch. But that is the news today. We'll see what happens, whether the Biden administration, who has said that they won't enforce anything, in the interim, it'll be interesting to see how the incoming Trump administration handles that. But it has now been basically codified into law with the Supreme Court upholding that law. Now, I want to get into a little bit of breaking news this morning because there's a ton of news in the world of GLP-1s this morning. Medicare announced today that both Wegovy and Ozempic will be added to Medicare Part D price negotiations this year to set into effect by 2027. So now Medicare has some of the leverage that you see in a lot of single payer countries, where the government will actually be able to go in and negotiate the cost of both Wegovy and Ozempic, which is excellent news for people who are on Medicare. Of course, on top of this news, we've seen the Biden administration move to change the basically regulation that the longstanding regulation that Medicare has had to not cover anti-obesity medicines. Now, this law was brought into effect essentially because the old versions of anti-obesity medications were largely stimulant based. And so giving a whole bunch of people who are older in age, perhaps, at that point in their life, struggling with some cardiac issues, to give them a bunch of stimulants to control their weight wasn't super sensical. Of course, this new class of medication is totally different. And so the Biden administration has moved to change that policy. Now, there is actually an open comment period right now where you as patients can advocate for the acceptance of this policy change. I would strongly recommend that everyone visit the link in the description of the YouTube video. I can't do that obviously over here on Instagram. But if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on LinkedIn, you get the opportunity to follow that link and really contribute to the public comments. It's all available there in that link. And I would strongly recommend that you advocate for this policy change to add obesity coverage to Medicare. And now we know that Wegovy will be part of those cost considerations, those negotiations with Medicare. So absolutely amazing news there. Moving on to some other breaking news, some more semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy news this morning. We got information today on the top line data from a recent clinical trial that just wrapped up testing high doses of Wegovy. So I want to get into a little bit of what we learned there. Essentially, they were testing 3 times the highest dose that's available currently on the market for semaglutide. And that is 7.2 milligrams. That's 3 times the highest dose of Wegovy, which is 2.4 milligrams currently. And they wanted to see how much by essentially tripling the dose, how much could they improve the weight loss. And so I want to get into those numbers with you and a little bit more about how Novo Nordisk is currently positioned in the marketplace from a weight loss standpoint. So the numbers that we saw here from the 7.2 milligram dose of Wegovy, 7.2 milligram dose of Wegovy, patients achieved a mean weight loss, an average weight loss of 20.7% weight loss. So right around 21% weight loss. That comes in just under tirzepatide surmount trials, which were around 22%. And that is a really amazing result for semaglutide, but I sort of expected to see higher results by tripling the dose. Of course, we did not see a massive increase, but this is pretty significant over the around 16-17% that you saw in the clinical trials for 2.4 milligrams of Wegovy. Now, the interesting thing here is, regardless of patient adherence to the dose escalation, to using the highest dose of Wegovy available in this trial, we did still see that the average weight loss for people who did not adhere to the trial was still around 18% weight loss. So a huge increase over previous Wegovy numbers. So an increase nonetheless. Now, when the big question is always going to be, when will we see this hit the market? When will high dose Wegovy actually be available? Now that we have top line data, it is highly likely within the next 3 to 6 months, we could see high dose semaglutide hit the market. So that is a really great news for people who have struggled on the current doses that are available, maybe maxed out what the current high dose can do, maybe to get a little bit additional benefit from a weight management standpoint from the 7.2 milligram dose of Wegovy. Now, interestingly, when you compare and contrast this weight loss number with the recent numbers that we got from Novo Nordisk's CagriSema clocked in at 22.7% weight loss. So 2% higher, 2% higher weight loss when combining cagrilintide and semaglutide. Of course, that's only in the 2.4 milligram dose, but interesting that high dose semaglutide got awfully close or dangerously close to what we saw in the CagriSema trial. Now, the CagriSema trial is an excellent number. 22.7% weight loss is an astounding number out of a injectable treatment. But the thing that you see that's interesting about that clinical trial is that they had sort of a sky high promise with the CagriSema trial of 25%. Now, one of the main reasons that I believe that they did not hit that number is tolerability. Very high doses of vomiting in that clinical trial. And so one of the ways that they designed that trial, sort of knowing that there would be some pretty intense GI side effects for people, is they allowed people to sort of escalate doses at their own pace, and they did not have to reach the highest dose of CagriSema in that clinical trial. Whereas with the surmount trials for Mounjaro, tirzepatide, Zepbound, the surmount trials are actually technically trial for Zepbound, the weight loss version. In the surmount trials, you had to escalate your dose every 4 weeks. So they got on the, if you're going to be on the highest dose, which is where excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat this morning, where you get to the highest benefit of 15 milligrams at that, 22, 23% weight loss area, you had to go all the way up to 15. You had to follow the protocol for the trial and the trial design. So that was not the case with the CagriSema trial, where you actually did not have to dose escalate. So that's sort of maybe why you didn't see that 25%. But of course, Novo Nordisk would have baked that into their projection of that 25%. So still fell short of what they were expecting for their amylin and GLP-1 co-agonist. So interesting news today, just to sort of recap, you got your 7.2 semaglutide trial, the step up data, top line data was reported today. And we learned that 20.7% average weight loss over 72 weeks was seen in this trial. And it surpassed the 17.5 with the standard dose of 2.4 milligrams in the Redefine 1 trial. So the other interesting tidbit of information here was that you saw 18% of people achieve, or you saw 18% weight loss from people that did not dose escalate or reach the maximum dose. There's a variable amount of data in there, but essentially they weren't forced to dose escalate, and those people saw 18% weight loss still. So a pretty big improvement. Now, one of the things that we saw also within this trial was that a good number of people reached 25% weight loss. I believe that it was 30% people achieved 25% weight loss. So the additional dosing is really good news. It'll probably be on the market within the next, I would say safely within the next 6 months, we would likely see high dose semaglutide in the form of Wegovy hit the market. And that is excellent news for people struggling on current doses. There are high dose trials for tirzepatide going on right now as well. If you're somebody who's maxed out sort of on the benefit that tirzepatide will give you, they're testing 20 and 25 milligrams is what has been reported to On the Pen from some industry insiders. 20 to 25 milligrams are the trial, but that will likely not be, I don't believe that trial wraps up until 2026. So probably sometime late 2026, early 27. Of course, at that time, we'll also have retatrutide. So for people looking for higher weight loss out of a medication, retatrutide will be on the market by then. CagriSema will be on the market by then. And there, I believe, are over 16 different candidates at this point for GLP-1s that will hit the market by 2030. And so the weight loss, obesity management industry, 16 GLP-1 contenders entering the market before 2030. So the weight loss and anti-obesity medicine, chronic weight management market for medications, which will include a combination of oral therapies. I know we get really excited about Viking Therapeutics over here, VK2735. I believe Viking Therapeutics also has an amylin agonist in the works. There's a lot of people that are feeling like amylin is maybe not what it was once hyped up to be, especially from a tolerability standpoint. But as a diabetic, somebody who is a slower responder to these medicines, I do get really excited about different pathways to weight loss, especially with something like amylin, which is a non-incretin hormone, which is co-secreted in the pancreas with your insulin. And so if you're diabetic, you're kind of already dysregulated in your insulin production and all of that. Of course, with this hormone being co-secreted with insulin, I think it offers potential excellent therapies to those who are a diabetic like myself. So that's the news for today. I wanted to bring you, I mean, usually we're doing a weekly roundup, but I thought there's so much news dropping this morning, and I could not encourage you more to check out On the Pen Live from last night, where we had our TikTok refugees. The TikTok ban, of course, upheld officially by the Supreme Court of the United States this morning, with massive implications to the availability of the TikTok app on the marketplace here in the United States. If you are a TikTok refugee, YouTube is a great place to be. Great community. Shout out to my YouTube folks. I'm just going to give a quick shout out to the folks I see in the chat here. Mrs. Bell is in the chat. Eunice, Melody, Neo Queen. Good to see you all this morning. DJ, Sue the Dude, Cherry Pie, Bless 5XS. We've got everyone in the house tonight. Sean Akridge, I see you too. Julie, welcome. Thank you for being here. Pammy, Joe, and Sherry, Roxanne as well. A lot of folks joining us over on the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you found this video and information helpful this morning. Happy to share it with you. And I will take any questions that you all may have this morning. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about, or anything that's going on outside of the world of what we've talked about. There's tons going on in the GLP-1 community right now in terms of the news that's sort of rolling around. And I want to just open up the opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have over the next couple of minutes. We'll probably be live for another 3 to 4 minutes, depending on how many questions we get in the chat. And definitely make sure that if you are watching over on YouTube, that you leave a comment. If you're watching this on demand later, let us know what you thought of the video. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. All of these things help to improve the algorithmic sort of placing. Incretin Science wants to know if I will be going to Red Note. I will not be going to Red Note. I'm not going to exchange one Chinese app for another Chinese app. And I manage enough of them. So if you want to find me right now, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. We also have a Discord. So the best place to get all of this, to just kind of figure out where the best place to land with On the Pen content is to go to onthepen.com. Onthepen.com. That's going to show you every place that we are at. So I got a question in the chat. Eunice wants to know what milligram I'm on. I'm on the 15 milligram dose of Mounjaro. And so that is where I'm at currently, maxed out, right? So, hey, RC, how are you doing today? Good to have you here. Good to be with you all. Have family members on Medicaid. They are type 2, but can't get any GLP-1, guess only Medicare. So some of the, interestingly, if this law or regulation gets changed for Medicare, many state Medicaid programs will follow suit. For having to cover GLP-1 medications for obesity management. So that's super important point to make, is that Medicare regulation changes have impact on Medicaid changes. And all of those things are things that we need to be advocating for. If you go to the description of this video, you'll see a link. There's an open comment period right now for the policy change to allow Medicare to cover anti-obesity medications. And we need to get our voices out there, and we need to be commenting publicly on this. So the link is in the description if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Those are the 3 places that we're streaming. Obviously, we can't link anything over here on Instagram. So definitely want to make sure you do that. Somebody asked in the comment, is Medicare covering Mounjaro now? Certain Medicare plans are covering Mounjaro if you're type 2 diabetic. Of course, we've seen Zepbound added to Medicare, or at least they will be adding Zepbound to some Medicare formularies for the treatment of sleep apnea. We did see that news. That news broke last week. Any other questions I will take real quick. Samantha said the new Medicare Part D stuff is interesting for sure. Sure would love to see what the app does for other insurance company and how they will cover in the future as well. It will be very interesting to see this sort of trickle down. That tends to be what you see is whatever Medicare adopts for a standard of treatment. Ultimately, you see the insurance companies, the private insurance companies sort of lag, but ultimately take up the same sort of policies as it relates to coverage. I don't know if that will be the case for anti-obesity medication or not. This is an unprecedented time we live in. There's 100 million people that would benefit now from a $1,000 a month drug. How that all sort of unfolds will be an interesting thing to happen or to watch happen. Any other questions I will gladly take. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up here in the next 40 seconds. If you have a question, please drop it in here. Cherry Pie was wondering about getting insurance, getting your employer to add these coverages. Please jump over to onthepen.com and type in the search bar form letter. You'll see an article where I have put together how to start those conversations with your employer. And you'll see a form letter that you can simply add your own personal information to and submit that to the folks in your company who make that decision. Now, if you're in a smaller company, it could be an HR manager. It could be the owner of the company. It just depends on how small of a business you are. If you're in a larger business, there's a benefits coordinator often that you'll want to get in touch with. That is where you would start to have those conversations, benefit coordinators, HR, or if you're in a really small business, the business owner themselves. But that form letter should really help to broach those conversations and help give you the info that you need to start advocating for yourself there. It's important that we be on our employers. It's part of why Eli Lilly wants to see compounds go away is because with millions of people on compounds, that means millions of people that are not petitioning their employers to add obesity coverage. And so I think that's sort of what they're hoping to see happen, so that there's a quicker uptake of these coverage of these medications. So somebody asked in the chat also where this information is located on the, if you just go to onthepen.com, that's our website, and search form letter in the search bar. Just type in form letter. You'll be able to find it there. We've done form letters for a couple of things, but it should be easy to pick out that this one is to get your insurance, your employer to cover obesity medicine under their insurance plans. Will Lilly factories be ramping up soon? Shortly, they will. You know, interestingly enough, what Lilly is claiming right now is that they are sitting on sellable doses, that basically the distributors are not stocking the medication like they could be. Now, that could be to a number of reasons, right? If you think about distributors of these, have never, ever, ever in the history of distributors been required to keep so much cold medicine. So the infrastructure for distributors, your McKessons of the world, your Cardinal Healths, your, you name it, the different distributors that supply pharmacies with medicine, they have not had historically the infrastructure to manage so much cold storage medication. And so it's a very expensive endeavor for distributors to stock this medication. So when there's an influx in one dose or the other, it makes it very difficult to manage. I think the other interesting thing about tirzepatide is that they offer it in these 2.5 milligram increments instead of, like you saw in the clinical trials, they went 5, 10, 15. But they've added these incremental doses to help people tolerate the dose escalation. But that creates a really wide variable in knowing what numbers and amounts and quantities to buy if you are a distributor, let alone a pharmacy. And so Lilly claims that distributors are not buying and stocking these in the way that their analysts sort of thought they were. And so they're sitting on sellable doses. But to the question about when will the manufacturer be ramping up? We know that the North Carolina plant will be coming online soon. It was not online and cranking as quick as they thought it would be. That sort of plays into all of the rules and regulations that are required of a pharmaceutical company to stand up an FDA approved facility, which is quite an undertaking. And so I think that it's just caught up in some red tape, but we'll have to see, and we'll certainly be reporting on that as soon as possible. So if y'all don't have any other questions, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being the best part of what we do at On the Pen. Make sure you leave a comment after we go live here. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. Let us know what you think of these live streams that we do here. Let me know what you think of the news today. And also hit the thumbs up button to help the algorithm give the video a little boost. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being the best part of what we do at On the Pen. Couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't do it without you. Until next time, catch you on the next one.